Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. I'm going to depart a little bit from what I normally do. I usually talk about current events and that sort of thing. But something that's very important that I think we all need to understand, and that's the Constitution of the United States. Why is it important? Well, first of all, every servant, from the president on down to our local police and the clerk in our county office, takes an oath to the Constitution of the United States. Now, that oath may vary a little bit. I've taken the oath 5 times, and it's varied a little bit because I took it as an enlisted man, as an officer, and as a member of my city council. As an officer, as a congressman, for instance, which is pretty much the same oath, we took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, they tell us who the foreign enemies are, but they don't tell us who the domestic enemies are. We have to find that out on our own, don't we? Be that as it may, that oath will vary anywhere from what I just talked about, or simply to support and defend without mentioning the enemies, or sometimes just to support. But nonetheless, every one of us who raised our right hand and say we are going to support the Constitution really ought to know what the Constitution says, what it means, what its original intent was, and then support it in every way possible in our duties, no matter what we're asked to do. Sometimes we have to do things that we just simply have to say, no, I'm sorry, that's against the Constitution and I took an oath. Now, today that's hard, because so many unconstitutional things are coming down either through the federal government or local government or wherever, and forcing us into doing things that really are against that oath. Now, one of the problems that we have is how the Constitution is being taught in the schools. Now, in the 1970s, I saw one book that said that the Congress can regulate private weapons. In other words, the people have the right to keep and bear arms, but Congress has the right to regulate private weapons. And it was said as if this was the actual language of the Second Amendment. Now, that's not what the Second Amendment says. It says the people have the right to keep and bear arms, basically, period. And then they add the fact that it's nice if they're organized into a militia. But the whole idea was for the individual to be able to protect himself, his hearth and home, his community, etc., from anything that would be draconian or criminal or anything else. The individual must have the right to defend himself. And having weapons is one of those ways of defending that right. Now, today in Common Core, the curriculum that they're using in Common Core, they have the Second Amendment taught in this manner. And this is a quote: "The people have the right to keep and bear arms in a state militia." Well, as you know, that is not what the Second Amendment says. And the thing is that if you have that mindset, you have a totally different idea of what the Second Amendment means. Right now also, there is a move within the people who want to have a constitutional convention or a convention of the states, whatever you want to put on that as a name. They want to alter the Constitution. Now, if you really look into this, you will discover that most of these people want to alter the Second Amendment. Now, there are conservatives involved in this move to hold this convention of states or constitutional convention, whatever, that are supposedly conservatives. They say conservative things. They promote conservative things. But they're working with individuals who want to alter the Constitution, particularly the Second Amendment. And they've said so. And they want to only add a few words. And those few words in the Second Amendment are in a state militia. The right of the people to keep and bear arms in a state militia shall not be infringed. So the whole idea is that you have the right, according to them, as long as you are in a state militia. Outside the state militia, outside of government, you're not allowed to have the right to keep and bear arms. A big difference. So you can see how that can bear on someone taking orders, a military person or a policeman from the government, that says you have to go in and disarm this citizenry in this neighborhood or whatever. The way they've been taught in the schools, the Second Amendment, that would be fine. If it's in a state militia, they're not a militia, Congress can regulate. Congress has ordered us to do this, and they're regulating it, so it's okay if I go in and violate the rights of the citizenry by disarming them. You see, that kind of an education can be out there, and they can be swearing an oath to the Constitution, completely not understanding what the Constitution says, the meaning of the Constitution, the intent of the Constitution. And this permeates into other things, freedom of speech, many things like that. Right now, we see the Obama administration, for instance, toying with the idea of political correctness in the way of commentators on television and radio. Specifically, right now, they're talking about fining individuals who use the term Redskins in regard to talking about the Washington Redskins football team. I think that's a little bit over the line. As an individual who has Indian blood in me, I could care less whether they call them Redskins, Braves, Warriors, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a derogatory remark, but a actual praise of the American Indian. But there are those that always want to twist race and divide and conquer by getting people to think more in terms of race and color and all the rest of that stuff rather than as Americans. Let's leave that other stuff behind. Let's be constitutional Americans and allow freedom of speech. We may not like it. I don't always like what comes out of a person's mouth, but hey, it's their right. People may not like what comes out of my mouth. I've had a few occasions where that's happened. But hey, it's our right as Americans, not as Americans, but just it's our God-given right, whether we're Americans or not, to have freedom of speech, have the right to defend ourselves, etc. So it's very important that we study the Constitution. Go online, get DVDs. You can order them from us. Go onto our website. You can find out how to get constitutional study groups together and study the Constitution. The more people who understand that document and the reasons behind it will understand better how to solve the problems we have in our government today. Until next week, we'll see you then.